Welcome to the Cricket Table Podcast. This is Rob.
And this is Kai.
So we're trying to record this for a second time because we had some technical difficulties. I should probably say off the top that we're actually recording this from my iPhone while we walk around our neighborhood as sort of a introduction into another podcast that we're going to be starting up relatively soon. Do you want to tell people a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah, so the name of the podcast is At Streetwalkers.
Well, that's not, the podcast isn't At Streetwalkers. Just Streetwalkers.
Streetwalker. Yes, I'm thinking of the Twitter handle.
You're getting the Twitter handle confused.
I'm getting people primed up for it. It's Streetwalkers, and it was basically the brainchild of Rob, because Rob and I, we have a lot of in-depth conversations about gender politics, about life, about relationships
and whatever, yeah.
And he thought that why not make it a podcast and see if other people have similar perspectives, and especially coming from a female perspective for me and a male perspective for him, we have completely different takes on things too because of that. So this is just an introduction
into the sound of what we're going to be doing with that, I suppose. But yeah, so we've had such great conversations, and I guess we just figured, well, if we're going to have these great conversations, maybe other people will find them interesting, and that's a podcast. Really, I feel like that's how a lot of podcasts just start. It's just like, hey, this is a good talk. Let's record it and put it on the internet.
Yeah.
So we're sort of doing a backdoor pilot, I guess, for Streetwalkers here. So you can follow us on Twitter at Streetwalkers Podcast already. And the name is obviously chosen because we are walking on the street, and also because I like things that are a little naughty, and I like my innuendo.
We should make that the tagline.
The Streetwalkers Podcast for things that are a little naughty, but not really. This is just two people walking around and having a conversation. So yeah, keep an eye out for that, and I'll update you guys on Twitter as far as when the first episode will debut. I'll also mention it on a subsequent episode of this podcast, so that our faithful Cricket Table Podcast listeners can check us out over there. But as for today, we're going to be talking exclusively about Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. This is the follow-up release from Man of Steel director Zack Snyder, the man behind Watchmen, 300, Sucker Punch, that owl movie that no one I know has ever seen, including myself, actually. I'm curious to check it out, but slipped under the radar. We see Henry Cavill returning as Superman, introducing Ben Affleck as Batman, which was funny because he was actually one of the more divisive figures of the film, when we were hearing about the production and all of that, and bringing in Jesse Eisenberg as Lex Luthor. And yes, I laughed because, So, just going into, general reactions to the film, what did you think of Batman v Superman as a standalone film, as an introduction to the Justice League, as a follow-up to Man of Steel, and how do you feel it did, pun intended, justice to the title characters?
Wow, that's a lot right there. But from seeing the trailers, I haven't really been that excited, that impressed. I kind of think
it's Batman.
And I do love Batman. That's something that Rob and I have always bonded over, is we do love Batman. He is my favorite superhero. He's like a real guy. He just has gadgets and he's rich.
I actually think, well, that's also Iron Man, but I actually think one of our first conversations we were talking about Batman. I remember it was like before we even met, because we met on eHarmony, and I guess this is something we can get into more on Streetwalkers, but we met on eHarmony, and then we just started messaging each other and then having conversation. I remember, I think maybe our first or second conversation on the phone, we talked about Batman, and it's how much I loved it, right? Do you remember that?
I think so.
Kai's like, I had other things going on in my life.
And then I would make little comments on your Facebook pictures.
Yeah.
And being like, oh, that's... it's the car. Chicks dig the car.
Yeah, I remember that.
Beauty, and I'm the Beast or something.
So many great lines.
I know.
But you mostly like the Tim Burton one.
I do. That's
you should probably establish that too, because there's a dog we just passed that you guys probably heard, and this is a very dark version of Batman, even more so than the Christopher Nolan films that I know you're a little bit more mixed on than I am, just because it is so heavy and sort of bleak. And this version of the DC characters is even bleaker and even grittier and even more depressing. And a lot of people have been calling this film joyless, which I could sort of understand. There's a lot of that going on. So, I mean, overall, did you enjoy Batman v Superman? Was it better or worse than Man of Steel? that kind of thing?
Well, I definitely liked it more than the review said.
Yeah, geez, they were really
I didn't read
shitting
them,
on this
but
movie.
Rob told me about.
Oh, I showed you the
how
Rotten
bad they were.
Tomatoes score, and everybody's like, disaster, and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know. I think you guys are going a little bit far on that.
Yeah, I mean, and Ben Affleck did an okay job. I mean, I don't think he was the best part of the movie, unlike what the critics were saying. I mean, he makes a fine Batman, but he is no Michael Keaton, and I don't know.
You're not biased at all.
And I don't know. I think I might like Val Kilmer more, but it was a good A for effort, and I'm sure that maybe the next go around he's going to do even better. And my favorite part, actually,
okay.
My favorite character.
Oh, geez, I know what this is going to be.
My favorite character was Wonder Woman.
Well, that's good because she's the next movie. I mean, after Suicide Squad, coming down the pike, like next year. So, did you like maybe Superman more than Man of Steel?
Yes, I did.
Because it was less Superman and more everybody.
Yeah, I'm not a big Superman fan. I don't think my biggest issue with him as a superhero is he's just not relatable. I mean, the only thing that can kill him is kryptonite.
Pretty much. I mean,
that's just not relatable to me. He's an alien, and
oh, you have issues with that because he's an alien? Are you Lex Luthor?
No, and I don't mind. It's when you can be an alien, that's fine. I mean, it's all you listeners from another planet. I mean,
I always think that's funny when you see when you see a scene about Superman or another character from another planet coming here, and people are protesting him and all that, and they're like, "No aliens!" I'm like, "Wow, there's the real life application right there," because of that word. But so you were glad that there was. I mean, Superman was in this plenty, but it wasn't a sole focus on him. So you needed that break from his like steely faced resolve and all that.
Well, the other reason I don't like Man of Steel as much, and I like Batman v Superman better, is that one of my biggest criticisms of Man of Steel is like how much fighting scenes were going on. I mean, it lasted. The fight between General Zod and Superman went on for so long.
It's like 20 minutes of that, I think, something like that.
It was unnecessary, and I didn't see that as much with Batman v Superman. They had long fight sequences, but they were with different people too. So.
Well, I mean, even when I went to see Man of Steel with my brother and my dad. Even after that, my dad loves action and all that, but after a while, he was like, a little too much of that at the end. What the hell? They're like tearing buildings down and shit. But at least does it compensate for that frustration a bit now that Batman v Superman has acknowledged, holy crap, you can't trust Superman. Look at what he did in the last movie. Mm-hmm. Does that make up for it a little bit? And you're like, well, at least if they're going to have that happen, they're going to sort of embrace the fans' reaction about what the hell did Superman's caused so much destruction?
Yeah.
And have it be an integral part of the story where Batman's actually like sort of the stand-in for the fans, being like, this guy could bring the whole city down. Mm-hmm. He could destroy the whole planet and all that.
Yeah, no, and that was good of them. I mean, who's to say even listen to fan criticism? But they, I think that was good that they did a tie into that, because poor Metropolis. Yeah. So what about you? What were your thoughts?
I wanted to like it more than I did, mostly because I am somehow still a Zack Snyder fan, even though I now acknowledge that Man of Steel has issues, that Sucker Punch is not very good. I guess I just really, really love Watchmen. And I think that that's probably one of the best comic book adaptations in the last decade or so. So I know his visual style and what he can bring to it in that regard. Plus the fact that he was drawing inspiration from The Dark Knight Returns and some of the seminal works of at least that character, who, like you, Batman is my favorite character, my favorite superhero, period, Marvel, DC, whatever. Batman's my guy. And I like Captain America and all of them just fine, but I don't feel a personal connection to any other superhero the way that I do with Batman. So when I heard that they were bringing Batman into this, and when I heard that Ben Affleck was cast, I was actually one of the few people that was like, all right, he could do that. he did sort of played a Batman-esque character in Daredevil, and yes, that movie is not particularly good. The director's cut is better, but it wasn't his fault that movie wasn't good. It's just it was kind of a mess of a movie. And here we go with this, and you have sort of another mess of a movie. But it's not really Ben Affleck's fault. I think he's clearly gotten to peak physical shape to play this character, and freaking like The Rock in Fast 5 in some of the scenes when he's walking around. I'm like, holy shit. That's the guy that played Daredevil? He looks like two Daredevils.
Yeah, he was a great guy.
And I did like Man of Steel enough. I think I tend to teeter between 3.5 to 4 out of 5 for that. This one to me is a solid 3.
Wow. Okay.
Just because I feel like they tried to cram so much in there and rush so many things that the story never really has a chance to breathe. And it's funny that, and I tweeted about this when the reviews started coming out. Everybody was worried about Ben Affleck as Batman. Oh man, he's gonna ruin this thing. And I feel like I walked at her being like, all right, where's my Batman movie? I mean, I also said, where's my Wonder Woman movie? Because she's really cool.
Right on.
And that's a character we still haven't seen on the big screen. And it's kind of ridiculous that those three are considered the Trinity of the DC heroes. Those are the three big guns that they have. And the two of them we've seen in movies like a bazillion times. And then one of them is making her first live action debut, which is ridiculous.
Well, I think that it's also, there was even an article I read about this, that it's so difficult to make a heroine-led film. It just hasn't worked. Elektra didn't work, Catwoman didn't work. I'm sure there are other ones.
With superheroes. Like comic book heroines. Okay.
Yeah. Female comic.
Why is it so hard? They just don't, you know what?
Because they sexualize them.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. Or because they're like, well, sex sells, so we put a pair of boobs in a superhero costume. People will go see it, right? We don't have to worry about the story or character or anything.
Yeah, pretty much. And I think, and what was cool about Wonder Woman's costume is that it was, like a costume, but I don't know. I think it was more of a sensual costume that she had compared to a sexual costume.
Right.
And,
it's her whole thing is she's a warrior, and that looks like body armor. It doesn't look like a bustier or something. Mm-hmm. Adrienne Palicki, who's actually now on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., she was supposed to play Wonder Woman on a TV show, I don't know, a decade ago, maybe less than that. And the costume basically looks like, super sexualized. She looks like she belongs in a burlesque show or something. And I don't know. I thought Gal Gadot was a smart choice when I heard that she was cast as Wonder Woman. She's not as big or muscular looking, and she's a lot of people got really sexist when she was cast as Wonder Woman. People were like, her boobs are too small and things like that. I'm like, who cares?
So people are sexualizing female superheroes basically. Too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But anyone that knows anything about her, she's been in the Fast and Furious movies and totally held her own in there. Actually had a lot of standout scenes. Pretty much every scene a lot of the scenes she's in, she kind of takes the center stage. And I think that one moment, what is it, in Fast and Furious 6, where they're her and Han and I don't remember if it's Ludacris or Tyrese. They're trying to figure out how to get fingerprints or whatever, and she just walks over and uses her feminine wiles to figure things out. And her character was really endearing there. And she's got, she was in the Israeli military, and she's very, very much into fitness and
She did her own stunts in Fast and Furious.
Yeah, you mentioned that. Not on the podcast, but beforehand. But I thought she was a great choice here. So it's weird. You
don't have to, guys, everybody, you don't have to be big to fight.
To be powerful.
To be powerful.
Well, and especially when she's not a human. She's an Amazon. She's a sort of mythical figure like Thor. So obviously it makes sense that Batman would be bigger than Superman and Wonder Woman because Batman's a dude. Batman's only as strong as he makes his muscles. Superman and Wonder Woman are inherently strong because that's who they are, because of where they come from. So she just needs to look she just basically needs to look not ridiculous standing next to them, and you're good. She can't be like Taylor Swift, like a twig standing up there, but she she doesn't have to be like China, mm-hmm. I guess. You know who China is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah. And so I don't know. So she was great in it. Ben Affleck was great in it. The story was all over the place. And do we want to delve into some specific story issues?
Oh gosh, what was I even saying about this? Well, you start. I even forgot.
Well, I mean, we basically have, and I've heard other reviews make this point also, but it's valid, so I'm going to delve into it as well. There's basically 4 or 5 different movies going on here. Like, it wants to be a Batman movie because and spoilers for everything going forward, we're going to get into everything, the ending and all the big twists and the shared universe setup, which there is plenty of, even though it's not particularly handled very well. But it wants to be a Batman movie because it opens and closes with Batman narration.
Mm-hmm.
So, as a Man of Steel sequel, it doesn't really work because it's framed as Batman's arc. It wants to be, like I said, it wants to be a legit sequel to Man of Steel, dealing with, Holly Hunter, who's kind of wasted in this film, was saved for maybe a scene or so. She has this whole point about, everybody's been all amazed at what Superman can do, that they never stop to think what he should do, which is in and of itself a very cliched line that, really there's no other way to say that, first of all. And then it has this whole Lex Luthor world's finest setup with him pitting the two of them against each other. And then it wants to be the beginning of the Justice League, with Wonder Woman sort of emerging and crossing paths with Batman, and teases to the other members of the team that we're going to meet. And I guess, actually, you know what? I checked on that. I think that movie's coming out next fall already, Justice League. They're filming it we're recording this the end of March. They're filming it next month, April.
Wow.
So
it's a lot of post-production then.
Yeah, so I was even saying to a friend and stuff yesterday about oh man, I don't know if Zack Snyder's the right guy for the Justice League thing, because he tends to be a little too ambitious with what he wants to accomplish in a story. Mm-hmm. But if they were filming that soon, that's too late. It's already locked in.
So he's gonna do the Justice League movie too?
Yeah, both of them. He's contracted for it.
I'm not a very big Zack Snyder fan.
Yeah, I don't think you liked any of those movies I mentioned.
No. I liked Sucker Punch, okay, but then
because it's a female-centric movie?
No one else. But they were sexualized, geez.
Oh, God, they were.
And then you want to talk about... he's just not very good at plot lines, and his stuff is just too gritty looking.
Everything's dark?
I want to see a little bit of brightness. Really.
Yeah. Yeah, that's been a major concern with it. So...
But I agree with all your points, and that's what I took from it too. There was just a lot going on, and it's 2.5 hours, so you think that there would have been enough time to.
I was one of the notes I had actually. It's somehow it's simultaneously not developed enough, but also too developed in a way. You know what I mean? He wants to do so much in a single film that just doesn't work. And supposedly this was originally going to be 2 films, which would make more sense, because then you'd have the one film that was a Man of Steel sequel, sort of introducing... But that would have been better, though, because then the first film would have been a Man of Steel sequel, introducing Batman and sort of his suspicion of him. And then the second one could have been the Lex Luthor Justice League setup thing. But they just try and cram it all in here, where we don't even get... clear follow-up to anything.
Didn't you say this is Amazing Spider-Man 2? Or did
a little
I say
bit.
That?
I think you might have said that. But it does have a little bit of that, because that was a similar situation where in Amazing Spider-Man 2, Sony was trying to rush development on a shared universe. Because the first Amazing Spider-Man movie, it was pretty clear-cut what they were trying to accomplish. It was a new origin story for the character that everybody knows the origin of already, so I don't understand why they wasted an hour on that. And then... him facing off against the Lizard. So, swap the villain out, and it's basically the first Sam Raimi movie. With this ridiculously undeveloped, untold story about his parents that we still don't really ever find out what the hell that's going on. I don't think. And then the second one, with them trying to bring in, here's Electro. Oh, here's Harry, here's the Osborns. Oh, here, we're putting together Sinister Six. And it was supposed to go into, possibly directly into a Sinister Six film. Which never came to fruition. Yeah, that's canceled. It's canceled, but it might still happen at some point, because Venom was canceled And then now reports are coming that they're trying to develop that again on their own, separate from Marvel Studios. So
I
that
would
might
think
be
that
terrible,
they want to do Sinister Six since they're now doing since DC's doing Suicide Squad.
Yeah, DC's actually now beating everybody to the punch as far as the villain team-ups, which is exciting. And I wrote for cheatsheet.com that Suicide Squad will probably end up, and I said this before Batman v Superman even came out, Suicide Squad will probably be the better movie of the two, because it does have a little more variety as far as characters, as far as tones, brightness, and it actually looks like it's going to be sort of that gleefully sadistic kind of fun movie where it's dark but also humorous, and you're like, I shouldn't be laughing at this, but these guys are so much fun to watch that whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's bringing a whole host of characters that we've never seen before, as opposed to, hey guys, you want to see Batman? You want to see Superman? All right, here they are again, and here's some new people that you don't know, but mostly stuff you've seen before. So I still have faith in that, and it's Zack Snyder's not directing that. He's not directing Wonder Woman, so those you might like better if you're not a Snyder fan.
Who's directing Wonder Woman?
I think Patty Jenkins, who did Monster, the Charlize Theron movie.
Oh.
So they actually have a female director on that, which is interesting.
Well, they also don't have to do that either. They don't just have to be it's a female star. So,
but
let's go ahead and do
they also don't want.
Glad, but
yeah, they also. I think that's also. Not only is the fact that Patty Jenkins is a legitimate director who's been acclaimed in her previous work, that kind of thing, but I think it's also a little bit of a PR move and be like, hey, we get Wonder Woman. Look, we even got a woman in the director's chair, which is the same reason why they Marvel guy Ryan Coogler, the guy that directed Creed, to direct Black Panther, because they don't want to be accused of racism or anything, so they get an African American director to direct a movie about an African American superhero. Which, if they're going to do that, at least they picked probably one of the best filmmakers working right now that was already kind of gypped of an Oscar nomination to do that, because I loved Creed, and I think still haven't seen Fruitvale Station, his previous movie with Michael B. Jordan, but he's proven himself as an incredible filmmaker, so I know he'll deliver something really solid. But back to Batman v Superman. So of the 4 or 5 different subplots that were in motion, what worked for you, what didn't, what moments seemed sort of superfluous? Because to me, I don't know why there were 4 or 5 dream sequences, because I felt like most of them didn't need to be there. And I understand that the nightmare with a K, because Dark Knight, get it? The nightmare sequence which looks like Batman and looks like he's paying a visit to Tatooine or Iraq or something. Which, first of all, he looked weird with that leather jacket on. Weird.
I told you, he looked like Bane.
You were like, is that Bane? And I was like, no, it's not Bane. He looked both weird and cool at the same time. I couldn't decide if I was like, that's not right, but it kind of works for me.
That should be a Halloween costume.
I'm sure it will be. Oh, come on.
Batman in the desert.
Nightmare Batman. I'm sure there'll be a few versions of the characters that'll be very popular Halloween costumes.
So there were a lot of dream sequences, and some of which kind of threw me off. But
well, the Nightmare Batman sequence was clearly kind of aimed at establishing the fact that Darkseid is coming down the pike. I explained to you a little about Darkseid, right?
Yes.
So he's essentially the DC's Thanos, which, I guess if you're going to have Justice League fight somebody, I guess he's the go-to character to do that, because you can't have them teaming up against Lex Luthor or the Joker. It's got to be a bigger, global threat. But I just feel like if you're trying to establish yourself as separate from Marvel, why would you go with the DC equivalent of exactly what Marvel's been doing for a decade? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Then there's other options. I'd heard rumors that Brainiac, which is another Krypton-based villain, that he might have been at one point a contender to be the villain in that.
So basically, Superman's villains are a lot grander in scope than Batman's villains.
Well, yeah, it's his grander in scope as a hero.
Right.
Batman's are all criminals in Gotham City who something crazy happens to, and now they're a giant crocodile, or they're a clown person, or they have a freeze rays and shit like that. But Superman's are all interplanetary, gods and conquerors and artificial intelligence and that kind of thing. But the nightmare sequence, I understand that it was trying to set that up, but it also wasn't very entertaining. The action wasn't particularly good, and so much of this movie was spoiled in the marketing.
Yes.
I feel
my big frustration with the trailers.
I leaned over to you several times and I'm like, it's like a 2.5 hour version of the trailer, you know? And, hey, how are you? And it's just, I was quoting lines before they were said in the film. That's how like overdone and overexposed the footage was. And that nightmare sequence, you know, the whole scene that's supposed to be, I guess, really climactic, even though it's pretty obvious that it's not real. I mean, to me it was. Did you feel that? Were you wondering, like, oh, this might be a real thing? Or were you like, oh, this is bullshit?
Once Superman came through and just seemed menacing, I knew it was bullshit.
He had an army they were wearing his emblem on their clothes and everything. It wasn't interesting. I was bored. Okay, he's gonna walk in there, he's gonna scowl, he's gonna take his mask off, and then some shit's gonna happen, and it's gonna. I mean, I didn't. There's one thing to establish the shared universe thing and try and build towards that, and I feel like that sequence was, first of all, too blatant a shoe-in, and there's more of those we'll talk about in a second, and just not compelling enough to warrant that, like 5 to 7 however minute long that chunk was. This wasn't compelling enough to warrant that distraction from the movie itself, considering the story that they were trying to tell was already muddled as fuck.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
No, I agree. There was just too many different things going on with that, and clearly they like to establish both Superman and Batman had nightmare issues, but Batman clearly.
And
had
the
more.
Kevin Costner one was another one where I was like, I don't care about this at all. Like this, I don't give a shit about. You can't have Batman come in and have all this many things going on, and it still feel like the audience is going to care that Superman feels torn about what he should be doing. I'm like, didn't we already do that in the first one? First of all, you can't delve into how many times are you going to dip into that pool until, you know, eventually moviegoers are going to be like, okay, you have like 12 other things that I'd rather see right now. Why am I watching like him imagine a conversation with his dead father?
Yeah, I agree.
The Flashpoint moment, I think, worked a lot better. The Flashpoint moment being that scene right after the nightmare sequence where Batman essentially is confronted with the Flash sort of reaching back through time and warning him about. I thought that was more successful because it was distracting and it was kind of jarring in the moment, but I think it's supposed to be for the character. And also it was brief enough that you're like, whoa, what the hell was that? But it makes you wonder, oh shit, are they gonna do some kind of time travel thing in the Justice League movie? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like if we see that in Justice League Part 1 or whatever, or Justice League Part 2, where something has gone wrong and the Flash is trying to reach back into time to prevent something terrible from happening, and we actually see the other side of that moment, that would be amazing. And you'll be like, holy shit, that explains that. Once it all fits together, that will be an exciting moment. And it didn't detract enough from here to really matter. And that's why those, as frustrating as that may be to some people, that's why those Marvel post and mid-credit scenes are so effective. Is that the story's already been told, but they still get to hint at other things to come without dropping them in the middle of a film, you know?
Yeah, I guess DC doesn't like to do that.
I'm surprised that they didn't do that, actually. I think one of those... Actually, that Flash thing, or even the part with the other Justice League members, the email that Wonder Woman opens up and watches.
That could have been an after credits.
That would have been a post-credit scene. I don't know why it was in the middle of the movie. Just have her, especially if you take that part out, you have that conversation at the end with Batman and Wonder Woman where they're like, we need to find the other people like you, the other people to put together. We're going to need, something crazy is happening. We're going to need a team of heroes to defend Earth against it. And then have that scene in the post credits where Batman's like, hey, I found some prospects or whatever, and sends it to Wonder Woman, and then boom, there you go. We look at those little things, and then shit happens, and she writes him back like, all right, let's do this, or some bullshit. I don't know. It would have been cheesy, but it wouldn't have been in the middle of the movie, distracting us from the main title bout between the two heroes, which honestly didn't even really go on that long. For a 2.5 hour movie, how much really Batman versus Superman action was there in this?
I guess not that much, but
not nearly as much as Zod. Well, but I mean, but see, that's not good.
Maybe they're trying to find the balance.
Yeah.
Because the last movie, there was way too much of that, and then maybe this movie, they just wanted to...
But you don't feel like that with every time people fight on screen. Did you feel like that in Star Wars with the lightsaber battles? Did you get bored by that?
Not necessarily.
Well, exactly, because there was no emotional, personal stakes for the characters involved. And the Batman versus Superman thing, like the Zod one, I understand because it's essentially CGI out the wazoo, just like CGI alien fighting other CGI alien. That's the issue I have with the Transformers movies, because I don't really care about any of it. But the Batman v Superman fight would have worked so much better had they both been motivated by something clear and distinct, and something, the physical embodiment of their contradicting ideologies, of the way that they see fighting injustice. Batman sees a certain way, especially in this one where he's more intense and more brutal.
I did not like that. Like, that was not... It wasn't... I did not like seeing Batman so aggressive that way.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not used to that. And I realized he's angry at Superman. And it had nothing to do with Superman. Clearly, Superman can handle himself. But that was against character to me. Like, he looked more like a villain.
Batman?
Going after the good guy. Because Superman kept trying to not... Like, how I knew that a nightmare sequence was bullshit was when Superman came in and was being all menacing, acting like he was going to do something to hurt Batman. And I knew that he wouldn't, because that's not Superman's character.
Well, I think it's earlier in the movie where they confront each other briefly, and he's like, if that's next time your light goes up in the sky, it's like, no, it's the fight later on where he's like, stay down. If I wanted it, you'd be dead already. Because Superman wanted to kill Batman. It's not that hard to kill Batman, at least unless Batman's prepared, like he was at the time they actually started fighting.
He still gave him a beating, even with his armored suit.
Oh yeah, he did. So, but it's supposed to be the two of them seeing things differently and basically fighting out, symbolically based on the fact that they have conflicting views on things, sort of how Iron Man and Captain America are going to be doing in Civil War.
Right, but that, I don't know, something about that seems a little bit more still with Iron Man or Captain America's character than it did with Batman's.
Right.
And I know that they're trying to go with the comic book, but it was just...
Well, we also haven't seen that film, so we don't really... But it does look like Captain America... I'm sure he reaches a certain point. I mean, there's even the scene in the trailer where he's like, I wouldn't do this if there was any other way. That kind of thing, where he feels pushed to that. And I think the issue there might be that we're jumping in Batman this is a Batman who's been doing this for 20 years. And has seen a lot of his former allies be killed or go evil. And, Harvey, at this point, presumably Harvey Dent would have already become Two-Face. Robin would have already been killed, as we saw with the suit hanging up there. I
didn't know what that was, actually.
Oh, yeah, that's what that was. The second Robin, Jason Todd, is murdered by the Joker in the comics. And that's why the haha joke's on you, Batman is on the suit. So presumably he's grieving for that, as well as his parents and all the shit he's been through over 20 years. So that sort of colors his perspective on Superman. And it even gets into that one part where they're, in their alter egos, and he says, oh, maybe it's just the Gotham City in me.
But yeah, they don't really get
freaks dressed like clowns and all that. But it didn't work exactly because you don't really establish Superman's side of it. Superman only fights him because his mom got kidnapped, and he's being made to. So it doesn't. You're not as invested as a viewer.
He didn't even want to fight him. He was trying to even work it out with him and have Batman kind of become an ally for him. And Batman wouldn't listen.
He was blinded by rage.
Yeah.
And then it just makes Batman look like an idiot because Superman's like, dude, let's talk this out. Lex Luthor something or other. And he's like, ah! It's like, wait, I'm trying to talk. Yeah, and it just makes Batman look like an unreasonable idiot, and it just turns Superman into Lex Luthor's pawn. So it's not really the same emotional investment that we're going to have for Iron Man and Captain America, who they established in the Avengers. These two don't get along. They're just clashing personalities. They have different ideas about how to defend the Earth and all of that. And they've continued to build upon that every time they've shared screen together. So that now
they've worked together still as a team.
Right. They've overlooked their differences until this point it pushes those differences so much to the forefront that they're going to come to blows over it. So I feel like that will be more successful and more satisfying to see those two characters that have more of a relationship than these two. I mean, the way that their fight resolves, even with the whole Martha thing.
Yeah.
I didn't understand. I mean, I was like, I didn't understand why that necessarily made him stop the fight. I guess the idea that they're going for is, oh, you're just like me.
Yeah.
You have my mom. You have a mom that says the same name as my mom who died, and I couldn't say it because I wouldn't act because I was a little boy or whatever. But I mean, it doesn't, just because your moms have the same name doesn't mean let's be like. I showed you that great meme last night from Step Brothers. What? Your mom's name's Martha, so my name's Martha. Did we just become best friends? Yep. And then Batman goes to save Martha Kent, and he's like, I'm a friend of your son's. I'm like, really? Since when? You were about to kill him a minute ago. Like, literally, you were like, all right, I'll go help her. And then he leaves and goes, I'm going to save this Martha since I couldn't save the other Martha.
Yeah.
But all Marthas are not created equal. I don't understand what that has to do with anything.
And what is with the Martha name? Like, because my sister's mother-in-law has also named Martha. Is that just a name for moms?
Well, all these characters started 1 million years ago, so that was a very popular name, I would think, in the 30s and 40s, right?
I don't think you can be named Martha unless you have a child.
Yeah, pretty much. You change your name to Martha.
There you go. Yeah. Well, all right. So then you have the Doomsday thing.
Yes.
Batman.
Well, before we get to Doomsday, shouldn't we talk about?
We're talking about fight scenes.
Oh, we're talking about fight scenes first.
Yeah,
okay.
Talking about fight scenes. So, Batman is completely not necessary to fight Doomsday against Superman and Wonder Woman. I mean, Batman, I have to hand it to you, it's very honorable of you, but they don't need you.
He's like, I can help with this.
Yeah, they don't need you, okay? They are omnipotent, and
and in the movie, he was, well, they're not all that.
I don't think he even did anything.
They're not that omnipotent. We'll get to that in a second. But he was kind of standing back like, all right, you guys got this.
Yeah, I kind of think that in a way they were, protecting them with their own walls of shields and muscles, because he really...
Batman's a strategist, so what Batman would do in that situation is what he basically was doing in this movie, is like hang back and be like a sniper guy. It's like, well, yeah. Hang back and be the sniper guy who's like, all right, you guys line him up and I'll take the shot, and then he out with the kryptonite spear or whatever. But he didn't even do that. That was Superman. Superman did that, and Lois was like getting rid of the spear, and then we need that now, and now I'm gonna go get it. It was like a whole back and forth comedy routine over her getting the spear.
I know. She's a tough chick though. Go Lois.
Yeah, but they also made her damsel in distress one too many times in this movie for me. I feel like he had to save her like 3 or 4 times.
Isn't that
what they do? But I mean, but she didn't do a whole lot other than get in trouble. I mean, she did a little bit of digging about the bullet and like the fact that the bullet that killed these people in Africa, which I don't understand why an alien bullet makes people think that Superman uses bullets when he breaks people's necks with his bare hands and burns things with his eyes. I don't know. That was pretty thin to me, that whole thing. Even though it was cool to see, and I still think Amy Adams is a great Lois Lane, and it's cool to see her doing an investigation. I just wish her investigation wasn't so dumb. And
she's going right to the government source. And yeah, someone talked to you with this bullet. And shouldn't it be a little bit more, I don't know, spy-like, journalistic-like, instead of going right to the source.
Well, she went into the men's room to be like, yo, General. And that guy, Harry Lennox's character, he was in the Man of Steel as well. Yeah, I don't know if you remember that.
I do. He was the one that got called out because, or he said that Superman killed like a $10 million equipment, or maybe
at the very end of Man of Steel. Yeah. And that was a great line that he had. You got such big balls. It's like, you should be in here, or whatever. There were some good lines like that. I just wish Amy Adams had a little more substantive role. And see, that's something that they could have done if they had done a Man of Steel sequel with Man of Steel 2 featuring Batman.
Is she Gwyneth Paltrow in this scenario?
Sort of, but I mean, if you're gonna have her in there and just create stupid things for her to do, then you shouldn't really have Amy Adams in this movie. If that's the case, just write her out entirely. You can easily rework the script and have her not be in there.
I agree.
And it's not that I don't want her in there. I just don't want... I mean, if you have so much going on, that's a subplot you could have cut right out and then gave more time to the Superman-Batman stuff. But instead, they wanted to cram Lois Lane and give her own little story in the midst of all this other crazy shit.
They maybe also wanted to show how much Superman loves Lois.
Yeah, and I like that. The scene with the bathtub, I thought it was really sweet and that kind of thing. But in this context, when Batman and Superman fighting with Wonder Woman and Doomsday, it's like, well, how does Lois Lane fit in there? She's like, I can go get that thing that you dropped. Hold on.
I kind of thought maybe Superman should have just gotten that by himself because he's
he can't
a lot
grab
faster.
that.
Oh yeah, that's true.
I mean, he does ultimately, but it doesn't work out too well for him because his exposure to kryptonite is what kills him, so it doesn't have to necessarily cut him. Just being around it makes him weak to the point where Batman was able to cut his face and all that. So what happened is that when he picked up the spear and he went over to kill Doomsday with it, the act of holding it weakened him enough that he was able to get killed by Doomsday and get stabbed through. So how did that make you feel, the death of Superman?
It was sad, but
yeah, my mom was like really involved, like crying about it. I'm like, dude. She's
but
like, is
he
gonna be back?
back?
She's like, is he gonna be back? I'm like, yeah, of course. He's under contract.
He's Superman.
Plus, the comic books, Death of Superman. You didn't know about that, but you still knew he was gonna come back.
Yeah.
I just didn't think they were gonna go for the Death of Superman thing so soon. I figured they would save that up for one of the Justice Leagues and like the end of Justice League Part 1, have that happen, and then the team's going on, and then he comes back sometime in the second one.
Do they have to keep copying the comic books?
Well, I mean,
couldn't they have because maybe they wanted to do that because or copying.
Well, no, draw inspiration. It's not direct.
They had him probably die by Doomsday's hand because that's what happened in the comic books.
Well, yes.
If he died after Justice League, then that wouldn't have been copying the comic books.
Right.
So.
Well, then unless Doomsday was in there, unless Doomsday was in Justice League.
Oh yeah, I don't know if they would have had a villain like that again.
No,
he's
not
really boring.
Not anymore, I guess. Yeah, he's pretty much as one-dimensional as comic book villains go. But I mean, it's to your question about why they keep doing what the comic book's doing, because if they don't, fans will lose their fucking minds. They're like, that's not how it was in the comic books.
True.
Like, well, so.
That's true, because that was scandalous with the Batman movie.
Right. Oh well, they changed the his origin story. It wasn't the Joker to kill his parents. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that one too, and clearly in Batman Returns, the Penguins.
Oh jeez. Well, sometimes I feel like comic book fans are somewhat more forgiving on making changes from the source material when those changes actually make sense and are done in the right spirit. As long as you capture the essence of the comic book. None of those Dark Knight trilogy films, for example, none of them were direct adaptations of any stories in the comic books. You know how you're like, well, why did they do the comic books? Well, those didn't do the comic books. They took elements of the comic books, they took certain designs, certain moments, certain characters, but they told their own story with it. And this movie sort of did that. They just took the element of Doomsday killed Superman and they put it in the movie. But they shoehorned it in there just to be like, hey, remember that? They have them in the books. See, we could do it too. But it didn't really, I don't know. It felt so rushed. And then at the end when Batman is, speaking over Superman's grave, or I don't know if maybe Clark Kent's grave, I don't remember. I think it is.
Oh, I think it was Clark Kent.
Yeah, I think it was. Because they were in Smallville at that point. He's just like, I failed him in life, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, dude, you don't even know him, this guy. You were about to kill him. And you're like, our mom's got the same name, I'll save her. And then you're like, he's dead. Damn. That guy seemed cool. I mean, you know what I mean? If you'd built that relationship over the course of a few movies, like the Captain America Iron Man thing. Now, if Captain America dies in Civil War, that will feel earned, and you will believe Tony Stark when he's sad about it, when he regrets that we should have worked this out in a different way instead of why did we let it get to this point, blah, blah, blah. Because they've known each other for years, and they fought alongside each other and defended the Earth several times. Whereas here, it's just...
I don't like the fact that you're just presuming that Captain America is going to die.
I mean, I think most people think it might happen.
No, I don't want it to happen.
I know you don't want it to happen, but I don't know.
They have to take it from the comic books, right?
Well, I mean, they might not. Maybe they won't. We'll see. I'm just speculating. A lot of people are speculating that might happen. So, we also want to touch on, and I think we're probably going to wrap up pretty soon because we've walked around the small part of our neighborhood about as much as we can. It's not that big of a little suburban community. And I'm sure when Freddie and I jump on the next episode or whenever, I'm sure we'll delve into this all over again. But we can't finish off without getting into one of the more controversial aspects of the film, which is Jesse Eisenberg's version of Lex Luthor, or I guess Alexander Luthor Jr., which is interesting that they made him the junior to, I guess, an unseen character that was
maybe Gene Hackman
passed away. Maybe. It seems like a lot of people thought that he was kind of channeling Gene Hackman with his performance. You haven't seen the original Superman film. Well, but you should see at least the original. But a lot of people said that it's basically a cross between Gene Hackman's Lex Luthor and Heath Ledger's Joker, with like his nervous tics and kind of this long hair and like the way he's like, like, that kind of thing. So I know you had let me say my side of it first. I was mildly worried about Jesse Eisenberg's Lex Luthor based on the trailers, because he did seem so over the top, but I was still kind of amused by it. And I'm a fan of Eisenberg's in general. I've seen, more than just Social Network and Zombieland. I've seen a lot of his smaller movies too. The End of the Tour and The Double, things like that. And I was excited to see what he would bring to it. And honestly, I felt like he was one of the more entertaining parts of the movie. You have two superheroes scowling at each other. And this guy's performance was really weird and sort of out there all over the place. Putting Jolly Ranchers in people's mouths all creepily, and then like jars of piss, and like all these nervous tics, and constantly like ha 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 everywhere. But I found myself kind of giggling throughout a lot of his scenes in a good way, like, because I found it amusing, and he's clearly supposed to be insane, and as Lois Lane said, and they they capture that in a way that's quirky and unhinged, but also entertaining, and adds a little bit of levity to this movie that desperately needs something that's not going to make you want to, like, open a vein in the movie theater, because it is so dark and depressing. And you have these two superheroes who are basically staring each other down for 2.5 hours, being like, I'm pissed off too, let's fight, okay. And it's like everything is so gloomy, and there's nothing. How you love Captain America because you see him and you're like, oh, he's such a good person, and he makes you want to be a good person because he's a good person, and he's self-sacrificing, and he's heroic, and he's noble, and blah blah blah. These were just two people that just pissed off with each other and just ran, like, it's like the $250 million equivalent, because that's the budget on this movie reportedly, of two guys in a bar being like, I saw her first, sort of. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's just but without the entertainment value of seeing people fight in a bar. And Jesse Eisenberg brought a little bit, yes, of goofiness, but I feel like it sort of fits the character, at least this version of the character, and establishes his, not only the hatred of and distrust of aliens that Lex Luthor has in the comics and the animated series and all that, but brings enough quirky energy to it that delivers a new take on a character that we've seen before. Plus the fact that he's so young, that he's sort of inherited his fortune, kind of gives him this little bit of a sort of a spoiled rich kid, hipster type vibe that's essentially very inspired, I'm sure, by Mark Zuckerberg and that kind of thing, which is why you get Jesse Eisenberg for that kind of part. So in that respect, he was very well cast. I don't know. I found him a lot of fun for the most part, even though there was a couple of scenes where I was just like, okay, hair too far, but I'll allow it because you're more interesting than 90% of the other stuff right now. But I know you had a vastly different take on it.
I've thought that Jesse Eisenberg playing Lex Luthor was irritating from the trailers. So
you did.
You had warned me that some of the reviews said that if you really liked him in the trailers, you're really going to like the movie. If you really didn't like him in the trailers, you're really not going to like the movie. So
I wonder if that was a self-fulfilling prophecy on my part, and I shouldn't have told you that and just let it play out.
I think I still would have not liked it.
Yeah, probably.
But he was just
too spastic,
and I don't know a lot about Lex Luthor to begin with, but I don't know. He just played. I was wondering, I'm like, is Lex Luthor just playing crazy, or is he just a little bit crazy and more evil? Mm-hmm. And I kind of feel like the way Jesse Eisenberg played Lex Luthor, or at least the way the Lex Luthor was written in the script, he played it crazy. And you have, like, you're comparing it to Gene Hackman and Heath Ledger. Well, Heath Ledger was also playing the Joker, who is a criminal.
Who's not Lex Luthor.
Yeah, who's a criminal, and clearly he's an intelligent guy, but he is a criminal because he's unhinged. So yet you have Lex Luthor Jr., who is crazy, yet he's the CEO of a company who he must have been doing that at least for at least a few years. And I would think if he's that crazy and spastic, that company would have collapsed by now.
Unless he has other people running it for him, and he just owns it, and it's just in name only, like a lot of companies are. But I mean, I see your point. And the version of Lex Luthor that you don't really have much of a reference point because you didn't watch Lois and Clark, you haven't seen the other Superman movies really. So this is probably, am I correct in saying this is probably like the first version of Lex Luthor you've really seen?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Okay, so you don't really have anything to compare him to, but I mean, I grew up with, the main one that I knew growing up was the version on Lois and Clark, the John Shea Lex Luthor. And he is essentially more of a, rich business tycoon, mogul type, who's very like charming and etc. in public, and then behind closed doors, his eyes get all weird, and he's like having stare downs with snakes, literally, in the pilot episode. I should probably show you the pilot episode of Lois and Clark and make that a choice, honestly. And so that was the version I grew up with, this duplicitous, where he's crazy, but not like on stage while he's giving a speech, going,
yes,
and stuff like that.
I would think that people would just trade, would sell LexCorp stock right away.
That's
right,
like
that.
Right. So I felt like there should have been a little more separate. I had no issue with him being over the top and ridiculous. And in the moments where that makes sense, I actually think it works the best when he's, facing Superman, and he's telling him he's got his mom, and he's got the pictures of him, and he's like, God versus man, that whole thing from the trailer.
He really likes to give soliloquies.
He really does.
Or monologues.
That scene I thought worked the best because he's supposed to be unhinged and letting it all out there now because he's facing Superman. He's like, guess what? I've got your mom. Oh, what up?
He really hated that guy.
Superman?
Yeah.
But they didn't explain why.
Yeah,
and
that would have been, and for someone like me who doesn't know
the
backstory, I'm like, why does he hate him so much?
You walked out of there and you were like, why did he do that? I'm like, power. He doesn't like because he's an alien. I don't know. The movie didn't clearly. It's probably because it's an alien thing and it's a power thing, and he doesn't like. He wants to feel all powerful, and then this godlike figure comes down. And
it seemed like it was more about like God.
Makes him feel
alien.
impotent, I guess.
Yeah, it was more like him being
there were a lot of
alien-like
religious illusions going on
throughout.
throughout.
Because he kept talking about that. Like,
yeah, he did.
God versus man. God. I'm like, you clearly are offended by Superman and his
man can't
godlike.
Kill God. The devil will do it.
Yeah.
I thought the red capes are coming part felt really out of place in the middle of that scene with Holly Hunter.
Yeah, I didn't.
Because he was showing his hand a little too much. Like, to people that aren't supposed to know he's crazy, he's basically waving a red flag or a red cape, I guess, and being like, I'm crazy, because he's in there with her having that whole conversation. And then later with that other guy, where the Jolly Rancher scene that I mentioned, where he's trying to get access to the Kryptonian ship.
And also, why did that guy want him to have that? What was Lex Luthor going to give to the government that he's like, what do you want? What can I do for you?
Funding, I guess, I think funding on whatever projects they were working on, defense it looked like LexCorp was working with the government as far as research and development on the Kryptonian technology. That's sort of what it seemed like. But again, everything blows by so fast that you don't even get a chance to digest what's happening before it's like, nope, we're going to something else.
Yeah.
So you're not excited to see Jesse Eisenberg likely come back for something?
No, I'm not.
I'm sorry to hear that.
He probably. I'm also wondering how much of that was the script too, for him to act like that. Maybe Jesse Eisenberg is a good actor.
Yeah, and regardless of whether or not it worked for you, you gotta admit, he saw a version of that, a take on that character on the page, and he said, all right, well, if I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna make it interesting and different and unique, and he went for it. So whether or not it worked for you or not, he committed to it wholeheartedly, the whole performance. So
he should be committed. Oh wait,
he was. So, well, no, he's in prison. It's unclear. He was in prison, not Arkham, not in the insane asylum. Right. So, I guess to cap things off, clearly we have Wonder Woman, Suicide Squad coming out in August, and then Wonder Woman next year, which I know you're excited about. Wonder Woman, at least. Are you sort of open-minded about Suicide Squad? Are you like, that looks terrible? Or are you like, that might be better than this. It might be fun, at least.
It might be interesting.
You have a female, sort of a quasi-female lead. I think she's sort of the lead in this.
I've seen a lot of movies with her lately.
Yeah, you have.
Never saw Margot Robbie before really in anything like last year, but now she's everything. But, it looks interesting.
It'll be something different.
Yeah, it'll definitely be something different.
And then we have Justice League after that. So how do you, to wrap things up, I guess, I like to think I like to think that this has sort of a Days of Future Past vibe to it, that, the X-Men timeline was a mess, They had these two different versions of the franchise and different timelines. And Days of Future Past was trying to reconcile all of that and be like, all right, not all this is going to make sense, but bear with us. We're trying to get our shit together. And a lot of people have compared Batman v Superman to Iron Man 2, which does a similar thing, where it's just like, all right, here's the Avengers stuff going on, here's Black Widow, here's this, blah, 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 blah.
Mm-hmm.
Let's build towards that and kind of shoehorn some shared universe elements into this Iron Man story. So I'd like to think this will be them kind of getting their shit together, and then in subsequent movies, it will actually flow a little better. And this will just be like that awkward speed bump on the way to building the Justice League universe. Do you feel like that might be the case?
Yeah.
Or at least hope so?
Yeah, that could be. I mean, maybe the next movie, the Wonder Woman movie will be better.
Are you interested at all in those other characters that we saw briefly? Sort of?
Not really.
You didn't really get much.
I don't know a lot about them.
I don't either.
And it was a strange introduction.
It very shoehorned into the whole film.
Yeah.
So, all right, but I guess, again, I enjoyed, for the most part, I liked what they were trying to do. It didn't all work for me, but the Batman action was amazing, and Wonder Woman I'm looking forward to. So definitely still in on this, and hoping that it comes together into something worthwhile. And you're coming with me whether you like it or not. So yeah, I guess that's kind of where we are here. I'm sure when Freddie comes back, like I said, I'm sure he and I will delve into the somewhat more geeky side of things. But in the meantime, you can find me on Twitter at Crooked Table.
You can find me at the Vault Key LLC on Twitter.
Yeah, of course. Subscribe to the podcast in iTunes. Subscribe to the Crooked Table YouTube channel. I haven't put a video up there in about a week or so, but I'm trying to come up with some more ideas, so we'll be getting some more content up there shortly. Of course, visit crookedtable.com for more podcasts, videos, reviews, and other movie-related goodies. And we'll see you guys next time. Hopefully, around this time next week. So.
Yep, and we got our steps in. So.
And we got plenty of steps going. Now we're sweaty and need a bowl of cereal and to relax. So, catch you guys next time. Roll credits.
This has been a production of crookedtable.com. All rights reserved.
The art of the low KED.